Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to greet you all who joined us. Media Center Ukraine at Oakroom Forum continues its work, and we'll speak about the situation of the state borders with our speaker, Andrii Demchenko, the speaker of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. Mr. Andrii, please tell us what's happening. We see that there is firing at Chernihiv and Sumy region. What is the situation right now? Do you call this good day to you? First of all, I have to mention that today it's 120th day of heroic resistance of Ukrainian nation to Russian military aggression. State Border Guard of Ukraine continues defending the country in the sector of defense and security, and ensures security in the directions when there is intense situation. Our detachments work under the General Staff of Ukraine, and the Border Guard holds the ground in the positions under shelling of enemy. On the Belarusian border, there are no changes in the situation, no sufficient changes. Belarusian forces detachments, they work on the state border of Ukraine, 7 battalions and separate detachments of the Ministry of Interior of Belarus. The near border regions, there is engineering equipment of the state border, and we register use of radio electronic resistance. I would like to mention that several days ago, the Border Guard Committee of Belarus informed of the permit of Ukrainians of some regions of Rivne regions to visit forests of the preserve of Lachevny Bolota to gather herbs. It was a one-sided decision from Belarus, and this is a provocation. Because there were such permits before, but they had to inform. There was no informing this year on state borderline. Belarus is supporting Russian aggression against our country, and the safety of our citizens on the adjacent territories is under big question. Therefore, I ask the residents of the border districts to weigh their decisions, and temporary passing points, crossing points, they will not function, and our citizens will not be allowed to enter Belarus via those crossing points. And Rivne region authorities defined that there are certain zones to collect herbs that are conveyed, information about it is conveyed to the residents. In Chernihiv Sumy region, Russia holds some detachments near the Ukrainian border in Berdyansk and Kursk regions to demonstrate presence and to bind the forces of Ukraine. The enemy forms right now they don't make any striking to attack Ukraine from that direction, and they continue shelling Chernihiv and especially Sumy region, threatening the lives of civilians and civilian infrastructure. The enemy daily fires from mortars and artillery, handguns, and drops explosives from UAVs. Since the start of this month, we registered over 230 shellings of this territory out of artillery, aviation, and handguns. Regarding EU and Moldova border, right now the daily crossing is 85 to 90,000 people both ways, and 20,000 of means of transports. The biggest traffic is usually via Polish border, where there's 8 automobile crossing points. Currently, there are no queues to exit Ukraine with vehicles. And according to the information of Polish Border Guard, in the direction of coming to Ukraine, there are some queues out of vehicles, of civilian vehicles. In the conditions of blockade of seaports, there is logistic increased from the on the western border, so there are queues on cargo trucks. So now we are working to increase the passing capacity for trucks. In Ust-Lug, Zosin, on the city border guard, we started letting the cargo passing of that weigh over 17.5 metric tons. And Gruziv Budomish started working the same way since 15th of June. And within the framework of Open Border Project, since 20th of June, the Kharkivets-Korchova crossing point started with more lanes of for cargo trucks from 4 to 10, and also built terminal for civilian transport and for buses. Poland provided container modules for Kharkivets. Division of flows allowed us to increase capacities for movement of cargo trucks over 3 days of crossing point operations in this regime. This allows us to process 40% more cargoes. Yekaterinburg, the parties agreed since 27th of June, it will pass, only the cargo trucks will pass it. The vehicles under 7 metric tons and passenger will go to the other crossing points. And in Kharkivets, the buses will not be passing outside Ukraine because it's being renovated. Also works in other plots of state border is conducted. Romanian and Ukrainian side were meeting this week, discussing increase of personnel who will work on working on this and working on increase of cargo and passenger vehicles over the state border. Also, Ukraine proposes to make joint control in Perudne crossing point. I would like to mention that overall, since 24th of February, the state border in both directions was crossed by over 10 million of people. For exit, 6.1 million. Majority of them, 5.4, is citizens of Ukraine, 5.4 million. And to enter Ukraine, there was 3.4 millions of Ukraine. I want to mention that categories of citizens that currently cross the border, there are different categories. Unlike the first weeks and a month after the invasion of start of the invasion of Russian full-scale invasion, now it's females and elderly people and also males. A lot of discussion about restriction for males to leave Ukraine. Yes, the males from 18 to 60 have restricted leave for Ukraine. However, there are clear exceptions who is not covered by it, and the border guards allow the males who are exceptions to leave Ukraine. Exceptions include systematically for truck drivers and humanitarian cargo drivers. There is a defined order how they can cross border, and that can add to certain informational networks for border guards to produce the paper, make the paperwork. Also, the right for those who cannot conduct military service according to state to health, and those who constantly live abroad and have certain marks of the institutions. Also, those who get education abroad. The athletes have males who have 3 and more children under 18, and single fathers. Also, handicapped person and those who accompany handicapped persons. Daily, the border guards refuse crossing the state border. Sometimes it's 100, it's or more 100%. That mostly it's males that are subject to restriction for leave the country during martial law. Also, daily, the violent offenders of state border are detained. The date was yesterday. It was 30, over 30 people. Since 24th of February, on the green border, we detained over 3.5 thousand of such people. And 1,500 were stopped at the crossing point at the attempt of illegally using the forged documents or in other illegal way. Thank you. Thank you, Andrii. Your questions. Confirm. Sometimes there are notification about the enforcement officers about some business people that are illegally trafficking males across the border. Is our border not protected well, or what? With our many notifications, we also notify that we discover, so we find some jointly with the other law enforcement bodies, the schemes of illegal crossing of people across the border. It's about so-called business people that you mentioned. People who try to earn money on this category of people, they give advertisements that they can assist them in crossing the border, forge some documents for people further to use them, those documents, trying to illegally cross the border. However, the statistics that I've mentioned recently, especially on the people that try to cross the border with border crossing points using forged documents, that shows that we find those people that use forged documents. We define the organizers or persons that assisted them in receiving the documents, and people who use such documents, and people who try to organize this trip that bear criminal liability. That's cooperation between law enforcement bodies to find such organizers. The same is related to the green border. There are transporters and people who assist those who come to the border and take money for it. And further, they tell the routes like as if they can using the routes to cross the border. Yes, we find the people who did this. We find those who assisted them, and we detain such people to bring them to criminal liability. Some days ago, Chernihiv, Minister Troshenko, head of Chernihiv, informed that he was not allowed to come to Poland. Is that prejudice or somehow? How can you explain that he was not allowed to go to Poland? I mentioned that daily over 100 persons from the category of males that are restricted right to leave the border. We do not allow them come across the border. The border guards study thoroughly the documents for all such males. They define are these people subject to exception, and if not, such people are refused to leave the border. Speaking of some precise persons, I have no access to information regarding the allowing or not allowing such people to cross the border. So on your question, precisely regarding this person, I cannot say anything. Thank you for the information. Andrii Demchenko was with us, Speaker of the State Border Guard of Ukraine. And I remind you that at 2:30 you will have briefing of representatives of defense and security forces of Ukraine, and we'll speak about the situation on the front lines. So please stay with us.